I'm David Tinsley with Lenders Cooperative. I'm the head of the SBA LSP services, and you are watching a series where I am kind of diving into the new SOP 5010-8, really to highlight the differences between the previous SOP and this new one and different ways it might impact lending processes going forward within the 7A program. This is part 4 of this series. I will be talking about the do what you do philosophy and the impact of its general removal. As a reminder, this is not intended to be an exhaustive list nor any sort of a replacement for more formal training opportunities that are available. Really, it's just a focus on how this new SOP is going to impact lending from my perspective, and then some things that we should be considering in our processes. So when it comes to do what you do, what was that supposed to be? Right. So it was present in some small ways in the previous SOPs, but really it came out in a big way in the SOP 5010-7 and then upheld further in the 7.1. A common complaint among SBA lenders was the overall complexity of the SBA program. And then, and in some ways, that really put a procedural burden on lenders as they were trying to do the SBA 7A loans. They wanted to make sure every step was being followed, but oftentimes that was difficult. So at its heart, the idea was to reduce the overall regulatory or procedural burden on the SBA lenders. And then it was supposed to simplify underwriting and origination processes. So the idea would be it would be far more efficient, and lenders could then align their 7A program process with their non-SBA lending processes or conventional lending programs. And the idea was that would actually be far easier and faster for banks to do. However, if the question is what did do what you do actually create, it certainly streamlined loan processing, but it also led to concerns from SBA's perspective and other parties within the lending industry that there were concerns over rising defaults due to very inconsistent underwriting practices. So if the idea was to make it easier and faster, that certainly seemed to be the case. But the idea wasn't to make loans that the SBA would not have at its heart wanted lenders to make. And also in some other aspects, it did create some frustration with lenders who were actually seeking more prescriptive guidance. So it's great to be able to align processes with your internal partners. But if there was concern over at some later date that perhaps those processes wouldn't be seen as prudent or reasonable by SBA, it was somewhat difficult to really lean into an SBA program if you weren't sure how Okram or other reviewers would have looked at your program processes as well. So I can understand that led to some people slowing down and having difficulty with it. So do what you do is gone. Now what? Okay, so first of all, there are still a few places where a lender will need to reference their non-SBA lending practices. And a couple of examples of that are in the 7A small loans. In that section there, specifically when it comes to like life insurance and collateral guidelines, whether or not you're requiring life insurance on your small loans, as I previously covered, that will be a comparison to your non-SBA portfolio. And the same thing with your collateral guidelines, whether or not you would require, for instance, a personal residence as part of the collateral on a 7A loan. That would also be something that sort of left up to your preferences there. Now, what this means is that more prescriptive guidance is going to inevitably lead to more consistent loan quality. I mean, that's true, and ultimately that safeguards the 7A program, which is the point of this. But also remember that do what you do is still very much present in a sense in the SBA program because SOP is a minimum standard. So if your conventional policies or your lending practices are such that as a bank you don't want to necessarily require the minimum standard across the board, you are free to do that in as much as it's not violating the main requirements for credit elsewhere. In a sense, do what you do is still very much there. So you don't get to check out entirely from that concept. And I think at its heart, it was a good idea for where it was possible to make lending more efficient for the lender. But at the same time, there can also be more efficiency gained by following a prescriptive process, which is very much now in force. And in many ways is going to feel a lot more like the SOP 5010-6 and earlier. So that kind of wraps it up for this session. If in this next video, I'll be covering updates specifically geared toward documentation and closing requirements. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email me at the address here on the screen here. And if you want to visit our site, there is a question submission form that you can utilize there that we respond to. Thank you for watching this session, and I'll see you in the next one.